Okay, good evening and welcome to the Arundel Camera Club meeting for Thursday, October 17th. My name is John Melliker and I'm the club president for the 2024-2025 season. The Arundel Camera Club, did you move over the transition?
I did.
Thank you, good job. The Arundel Camera Club was founded in 1957 and exists to promote the art, science, and education in all aspects and fields of photography. For more information about us, please visit arundelcameraclub.org. Super simple. Whether you're watching us live or catching a recorded session, we'd love to invite you to join us in person. We meet every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. at the Severna Park Baptist Church in Severna Park, Maryland. Before we move to tonight's program, do we have any announcements from our officers? Ron?
We had 1,100 people sending images into the MPA contest. Judging in about a month from now, we'll hear the results. So I hope a lot of folks in the club put it in because
awesome.
We get some money back from all of our submissions.
Great. A lot of people submitted to the MPA photo contest, and we should hear back within a month to see if, I'm sure plenty of our fantastic members would win some good stuff. Any other announcements? Any other messages? Updates? Okay, well, let's bring up Christine and talk a little bit about our upcoming schedule before we go to our fantastic program for tonight that I'm very excited about. Ready, Christine? Do you have your microphone? Here, I'll give you this.
Good evening. Let's go over our schedule. Next week on October 24th is our next print contest with the theme of light and shadows. Bring your pictures in, participate. October 31st, we're having a portrait night. If you can bring lights or if you know any models who might want to come in and be our models for us, please let me know. And we will make it a good learning night for especially the new people, but for everyone.
Hey, Christine, just one thing. Please, you can have everybody tell that. Please have everybody make sure they let us know if they're bringing lights or bringing people, because if we don't have any lights or any people, because it is Halloween, then maybe we can do something different.
Please let us know if you're bringing lights or bringing people. We need to know. And because otherwise we have to figure out something else to do that night. On November 7th is our next digital contest with a theme of open. November 9th is our field trip to the Chesapeake City, Maryland. And then November 14th is a program by Ryan Maurer on chasing the fire, photographing Iceland's volcanoes. On November 21st is another print contest with a theme of open. And then November 28th is no meeting because it is Thanksgiving. Give me one moment. Tonight, we are having Rick Hulbert join us from, I believe it's Vancouver. And he is an internationally awarded photographer and has 4 decades as a professional architect and urban designer. And I will turn over the evening to him. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Christine, I really appreciate the kind invitation to speak with you. I'm glad that John is excited. I'm actually excited as well. As Christine mentioned, I've enjoyed photography for many decades, initially as a hobby, and then periodically during my 4 decades as an architect and urban designer, and then more recently as a professional teacher of photography. During the relatively recent pandemic, my wife and I were on a very short leash. Actually, what that meant was that I really didn't fully engage with making photographs. So to fill the time, I decided to review my past images, which is something I hadn't done previously. And believe it or not, I discovered something I was actually not aware of. I love symmetry. I know it sounds like, how could I not know that? But while not consciously searching for symmetry in the natural or designed and constructed environment, I found that many of my images celebrated symmetry. So I'm going to talk about that tonight. I'm going to share my screen by pressing the share button, and then I'm going to see if I can hide the floating meeting controls so I can see my screen. Click on play. Great. Hopefully you can see my title slide, The Joy of Symmetry in Documenting and Creatively Reimagining the Natural and Constructed Environment, which pretty much covers a whole lot of different subject matter. Paraphrasing an early 19th century architect, Viollet-le-Duc, symmetry means, in the language of art, a similarity of opposite parts on the left of an axis of what is on the right. So in other words, in this particular image, the axis is that vertical dashed line in the center of this particular screen image. Now, when I say, the same thing on the left and right, for instance, it's relative equality. It's geometric regularity. It's not necessarily mirrored, okay? It doesn't have to be exactly the same. This, by the way, is part of a ceiling in a fantastic cathedral in San Francisco, the Cathedral of St. Mary of the Assumption, by a very famous architect. Okay. I actually learn a lot from artists and scientists. When people kind of run into me and see me and know me, they know I've retired, but they ask me, what I'm doing these days. And I don't say that I'm a photographer. What I say is I enrich people's lives through enhanced visual perception. And they kind of look at me like, what are you talking about? That's an elevator pitch, right? I'm trying to just get them interested in hopefully asking to find out more information. Well, my photography is informed and inspired by the history of the two-dimensional arts of drawing and painting, along with the sciences of human vision. I think I was asleep for the sciences when I was in college, okay? So I've been studying the sciences, and wow, I get a lot of ideas that I can apply to photography. My passion is teaching and education. I'm going to show you lots of images, lots of pictures, but I'm also going to use lots of words and show you lots of words. I mean, I know that a picture's worth 1,000 words. You probably heard that phrase. But I think a great phrase, or maybe a great quote, is worth 1,000 pictures. Please don't leave, okay? I promise I'll show you lots of images. So here's a quote from a physicist, a very well-known physicist, Richard Feynman. Why should we be concerned with symmetry, he asks. In the first place, symmetry is fascinating to the human mind, and everyone likes objects or patterns that are in some way symmetrical. Symmetry is the one element above all else that the human eye finds most attractive. This is I made a copy of a photograph that isn't mine. Tomaz, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, is the founder and editor of Frames magazine. Some of you may follow him or know about him. But here's this quote, and this is just back in June of this year. I was in a rush. Something told me to stop, take a few steps back, pull out my iPhone, and take the photo. I liked it, but I didn't think much about how people would react after seeing my social media feed. And the punchline here is they loved it. All right. And I find when I talk to a lot of folks, and he's saying it effectively here, this is symmetry. And something about it is always compelling. This is from where I live. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia. The capital city of British Columbia is actually Victoria, another city, but this is our parliament buildings. And so you see there's a central fine building flanked by two identical other buildings, kind of a set piece. This is all bilateral symmetry, all right? The axis is right down the center of the image vertically, and you have kind of a mirrored image, except not the vegetation. You notice there's a missing tree. Now, I think there was a tree there originally. I don't know what happened to the tree, but you get the idea. It makes an interesting photograph. This is first light in the morning. I love early morning light. And then I also love kind of last light. So I took the same view. I came back that same day, in the late afternoon, early evening, and you'll see now the light's coming from the right-hand side of the screen instead of the left. But it's the same building, just at different times of the day, as you probably know, can make a huge difference in how images appear. This kind of architecture is called classically inspired, all right? It's derived from the Greek and Roman buildings. In the late 19th century and the first half of the 20th century, those buildings are called classical revival or neoclassical style. It was very popular in civic and religious structures. It's formal, it's balanced, and very importantly, it's often symmetrical. Now, symmetry goes way back in the art world. I mean, here in 1481, the delivery of the keys to St. Peter, what do you see? You see the same organization of building forms, the central building flanked by two supporting characters, I'll say. Now, he's also kind of making the people symmetrical. Now, not the same exact people, but the structure certainly in the foreground of the people. We're going to talk about people in symmetry later in my presentation, because it's in a way, it's a real challenge, but we'll get to that. And going way back, very close to the beginning of time, we've got prehistoric cave paintings. And this is an example of radial symmetry. Thousands of years ago. Contemporary-wise, here's the same radial symmetry in a stained glass piece at the U.S. National Cathedral. And even look at the sun. That's also radial symmetry as it kind of bursts through the leaded glass window. Symmetry automatically means order. According to the American scientist Alan Lightman, human brains actually strive to see things symmetrically. The reason must be partly psychological, he says. Symmetry represents order, and we crave order in this strange universe we find ourselves in. It helps us make sense of the world around us. Here I'm in Puerto Rico. No, I'm not. I'm in Old Havana, Cuba. And I'm walking down the street. I see this guy. I just stop, click, and keep walking. But he's got a very symmetrical pose. Yes, he's got a cigarette in one hand. His head is cocked a little bit to the side. That's, that's symmetry. Even the stoop that he's sitting on is symmetrical, not lined up with him, but in its own way, it's symmetrical. A lot of people think of human faces as symmetrical. Well, 2 ears, 2 eyes, a nose, you've got the idea. The thing is, if we took the right side of this, in this case, Harrison Ford's face, and mashed it together, and then took the other side of his face and bookended that, okay, we would get two very unusually looking people. And it shows you how asymmetrical, in a sense, our faces are when we symmetrify them. I made that word up, symmetrify. Now, some people, like in this case, Taylor Swift, have very symmetrical faces. And there are a lot of folks feel that the more symmetrical the face, the more beautiful the person. I'll let you make that decision. I will tell you that the skeleton on the right is extremely symmetrical. However, that is not Taylor Swift's skeleton, in case you're wondering. When we talk about symmetry, there's also a term in landscape, biophilia. That's the love of or empathy with nature and all living things. Biophilia hypothesis proposes that our sensory systems developed heightened sensitivity to living and lifelike stimuli of the natural world. And this is from a biologist and naturalist talking about symmetry. So let's just look at, nature quickly. There are 155 types of maple leaves, in case you're at a cocktail party and you want to kind of like, just have a competition to decide. This one is a field maple, but you can see how symmetrical it is. Okay. And then Trees themselves, they're symmetrical. This is from another photo that I made, in this case at a garden in British Columbia, Canada. This is in England, in London. Very symmetrical garden. I mean, not only the plant material, but the way it's contained, and then there's a fountain in the center, and there's two sculptures, one on either side. So, you know, that I made this photo because that's how it was designed. So I kind of tend to stand on the axis of these elements. And I hadn't really thought about that, but that's what I was doing when I was making a lot of these photographs, pretending I was involved with the design. Here's another way to get symmetry. This is called reflectional symmetry, where you use, in this case, a glazed surface. This is glass on the left, and it's reflecting the scene of the city on the right. This is out of The Economist today. It's not one of my photos, but it's a good demonstration of the power of symmetry and the desire on the part of a lot of people to capture it. Another type of symmetry, which is incredibly common, but people don't realize it, it's called translational symmetry. That's where a similar element, in this case windows, and I guess also shadows, are repeated. And that's called translational symmetry. This is a building I photographed in Toronto. Just walking down the street, I saw this and click. Symmetry automatically means balance. And you've probably, if you had any talks about composition, balance is a big deal. Symmetry is one of the fundamental principles of Gestaltism, a human behavior theory that proposes that our mind naturally creates order and completeness in the things we see and encounter. And that order and completeness, you know, it can be that you're photographing light, it could be the edges of objects and elements, it could be space, it could be depth, it could be tone, it could be color. So there's so many different aspects of photography and elements in a photograph that could potentially take advantage of symmetry. Here again, I wasn't thinking symmetry, but I saw this flower. It's actually a leaf, excuse me. I saw this leaf in a garden that I was in, and I just was enamored with the opening in the single leaf. Nature builds up her refined and invisible architecture with a delicacy eluding our conception, yet with a symmetry and beauty which we are never weary of admiring. Now, this gentleman, John Herschel, 19th century English mathematician, astronomer, chemist, inventor, experimental photographer. I mean, he probably also was a juggler. I don't know, but he certainly has a long list of accolades after his name. Anyway, that's the image. Horseshoe Bend, you might have heard of or may know of in Arizona. It's an enormous rock. And I could have stood pretty much anywhere around this rock. I mean, it would have taken me a while to get to the various areas, but I chose this because it just felt right to me. Even though I wasn't thinking in my brain, I wasn't even thinking about the word symmetry, but it's a powerful image. Shot in a symmetrical fashion. In California, where I originally grew up, we have near Yosemite National Park, you probably heard of, we have a giant sequoia forest. Some of these trees are like up to 2,000 years old and 210 to 275 feet high, like huge trees. Anyway, there were three in this cluster, and I tried to get all three in the same picture. So I used a fisheye lens, a circular fisheye, and I looked straight up, and then I got the images. I got the image of the three giant sequoia trees. But there's a lot of symmetry in this image as well. In biology, there's a symmetry of form and proportion, as in classical art. Nature favors the symmetrical, which is perhaps why symmetry is often something we find beautiful. So this is a mathematician from Harvard who is also extolling the benefits of symmetry. Here's one of my awesome wildlife pictures. I took my life in my hands and I photographed this moth. I call him the closet moth because I'm inside of a building that's going to be torn down and I'm going to be designing its replacement. But I wanted to just understand, the building a little better so that I could maybe use it as a kind of a guide for the future. And to make a long story short, this moth is resting on the outside of the glass. This building was 100 years old, wood frame, and click, I made the photo. I guess, if my mother was still alive, I know what she'd be saying. She'd be saying, Ricky, you should have cleaned the glass. No, 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 no. That's critical. All that stuff on the glass built up over years adds to the photograph, in my humble opinion. And here comes the axis of symmetry. Okay. Now, I'd love to tell you that I donned my wetsuit and went down a number of leagues in the sea to capture this very rare jellyfish. However, I was at an aquarium and I have a rubber lens hood that I can put on my lens. In this case, it was, I think, a 35 millimeter lens on a full frame sensor. Put the rubber lens hood on, I can put it right up to the glass. So there's no reflections at all. And it could have been taken, it could have been recorded underwater. So just a hint. I mean, that lens hood, I think, was like, I don't know, $6 or $7. Okay. So I find it very useful when you're up against glazing. Symmetry automatically is aesthetic. Okay, aesthetics is symmetry, elegance, and balance. This is a computer artist saying this. In physics, symmetry is a form of aesthetics. It's a form of beauty. And again, now we have a professor, a physics professor saying this. What I'm showing you is that almost every discipline embraces symmetry, not in the same way, but the terms are very similar, and I'll give you an example of that eventually here. This is the Royal Theatre. It's a National Historic Site in Canada. Again, look at this building. I mean, it is bang on symmetry. Not the shadows, not the angle of the sun, right? But it's very symmetrical, very stately. And if I zoom in here, not only are the windows or the openings, which we call fenestrations, that's the fancy term, they're symmetrical, and the sculptural quality of the frame of the windows is symmetrical. The bricks on the wall are symmetrically planned and constructed. And this is bilateral symmetry and translational symmetry in the same image. So I started out as a musician. My mother told me that I couldn't make a living at music. And I grew up in an era where children often listen to their parents. I don't know if that's the case these days, but in any event, I started with music. So I said, okay, I'll do something else. So I studied art, drawing and painting. But then I fell in love with architecture. I became an architect. I then went to graduate school, became an urban designer. During that entire process, I enjoyed photography. Now, why am I telling you this? It's because these 5 disciplines share a common language. Think of these words and think of how they relate to all these disciplines. Composition, color, harmony, contrast, rhythm, texture, balance, clarity, and of course, to no surprise, symmetry. Now, they don't all share the same meaning, but the words are the same. And it gets even better. We'll get to that. So symmetry automatically means harmony. another intriguing word. In music, you know what it means. It can mean the same in composition, okay? Harmony in art overall is achieved when the elements of the artwork come together in a unified way. Certain elements can be repeated, yet they still look and feel like they're lending themselves to a whole. So this is the center span of a bridge. I don't know how many of you have studied bridges, but generally the central span of I think almost every bridge, okay, not everyone, but there's a sense of symmetry. And that holds true here. This is in Quebec, Canada. And I'm in a location where I can actually face the center span, which is not always possible unless you're maybe in the water, but I was able to do that. This is an awesome bridge. This is in Lisbon, Portugal, and it is very dramatic. I think it's an 8-lane bridge, so this is huge. And then look at the gentleman on the bicycle or standing next to his bicycle. He's taking a selfie of himself in a very symmetrical stance. And then there's the iconic church on the top of the hill on the left. Okay, so there's lots of symmetry, symmetry within symmetry. And if I zoom back, pan back here, and you're going to kind of get the idea of the grandeur of this. I could have stood anywhere, but this location to me just felt the best. And now I look at it and I think, holy cow, that's symmetry. I mean, that's pretty obviously symmetry. I did photograph it from many different angles, but I'm just admitting to you that I wasn't thinking about symmetry at the time. Now I'm thinking more about it, I admit, but these photographs are from just, most of them are pre-COVID, some are after. So symmetrical composition is automatically intuitive and instinctive, okay? We are hardwired to look for symmetry in art. It has to do with the way our brain processes information. So I love waterfront cityscapes. In fact, I have a whole presentation just on waterfront cityscapes. In this case, this is Toronto. This is horizontal line symmetry because in this case, the axis is on the shoreline between the reflection of the cityscape and the cityscape itself. So you might say, well, yeah, there are other examples of this. Of course, there are. It doesn't have to be the built environment. It doesn't have to be the constructed and designed environment. It can also be the natural environment. I was in Antarctica on a lake or an inlet of water, but it was very placid water relatively. And I'm on a ship, but it's just, I love the image. And I love it because it's symmetrical. Now I realize why it got me so excited. So if we look at the universality of symmetry, okay, anything dealing with people generally is symmetrical in terms of the human form and structure. We talked about that briefly. Flora and fauna, sciences, I mean, physics specifically, mathematics. If we look at geometry, lots of symmetry. Psychology and neuroscience, sports, urban design, architecture, transportation, like trains and planes and automobiles, literature, poetry, carpets, quilts, music, windows, doors, bathroom and kitchen appliances. I know I'm all over the map. And I kind of made it like a little bit of a pyramid to match the light fixture that's hanging from the ceiling of this incredible church. But I'm trying to say that it's everywhere, okay? How about in the medical sciences? Symmetry runs rampant in nature. Evolution tends towards symmetry because the instructions to produce symmetry are easier to embed in genetic code and follow because of its simplicity. That's how it's thought that plants and animals have evolved over time. Okay. This is a physicist at Oxford. Now, just to show you how I try to go the full measure to present to you tonight, I got a brain scan back in 2022, and if you it's you've heard of the term maybe magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, and on the left you see above the brain stem, it's a kind of like above my shoulders, okay, but not far up. And then through the eye sockets in the middle, and then on the right is above the eye sockets. You can see the eyes above. You may think it's creepy, but I'm just showing you the symmetry, even in through our heads. Now, what I appreciated was that the one on the right, I call it happy face because even though it's kind of diabolical, at least I'm smiling, or my brain is smiling. So that kind of made me feel, oh, okay, I can deal with this. My neurologist, who took the neurologist, I should say. I don't want you to think I have like a, a neurologist on call. The guy who made the images um, told me that I had a beautiful brain. That made me feel good. Oh my gosh! How about sports? Here are Camden Yards, home of the Baltimore Orioles. Think of stadiums that feature sports. How about baseball, football, soccer, basketball? How about rugby, tennis, ping pong? It's not in a stadium, but sport. How about board games, hockey? I mean, most Olympic sports. How many Olympic sports can you think of that aren't symmetrical? Well, downhill skiing, okay. Um, I guess golf, right? So I'm not saying everything is symmetrical, but it's everywhere. It's amazing when you start to really think about it and look for it. So I do a lot of workshops, and I was in Berlin for this particular one. So this is a famous Brandenburg Gate, and again I kind of walked around it, looked everywhere. The one I like the best is this one. I'm standing right in the center of the gate, looking down the boulevard that faces the gate, looking up at the four-horse carriage at the top of the gate. I mean, this is symmetry, right? 1788. That's not when I made the picture, that's when it was built. Oh, I just tell you one other thing. This is well, I give a presentation just on AI, the impacts of artificial intelligence. Okay, I'm not into generative AI, which is adding things and subtracting things. I show you what I'm doing when I give the presentation, but this was when there was no people. There's a couple people on the left, but I didn't remove anything. That was the scene. I like looking for scenes that I can, I guess, record and be happy with the moment, okay, that the shutter is pushed. How about literature? Now, when I talk about symmetry in literature, people think, what are you talking about? Come on. Well, how about a photographic rhyme? First of all, a rhyme, you think of it with words, right? A rhyme is a repetition of similar sounds, usually exactly the same sound, in the final stressed syllables of two or more words. Most often, this kind of perfect rhyming is consciously used for artistic effect. A photographic rhyme is a repetition of similar or identical natural or constructed objects or elements in the opposite portions of a photograph. So, same kind of thing. Most often, this kind of symmetry is consciously used for artistic effect, just as the rhyming is consciously used for artistic effect. As a musician, I looked at that arch and I thought, whoa, you know what? This could be like a piano keys. I don't know if any of you have seen it. Well, I'm sure you've seen a piano or maybe you played a piano. It's a very symmetrical layout of keys. All right. And without getting too complicated, we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G is an octave. Then it repeats itself, okay? There's no H, okay? There are major and minor triads on the white piano keys are symmetrical to the D key, which is in the center there. But pitch structures, scales, and chords all deal with a form of symmetry, okay? And so what I say is that images can sing. Take it one step further. These are diagrams of vibrations of strings and drums. And the diagrams are mapping out the sounds. And they're symmetrical patterns. You can see them here, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 different patterns. And again, images can sing. I know it's not photography. I'm just showing you how powerful symmetry is, trying to get you to understand why when people hear or see symmetry, musically, verbally, however it's done, it's a powerful, powerful notion. Let's talk about competitions. Thousands of photographers from over 100 countries submitted entries for the Art of Building competition, showcasing the best examples of the built world. This is the top prize winner. This is a bridge in Spain, and the photographer, noted on the lower right-hand corner, made this photo, and it won. One example. Here's another one. This is interesting. This is the same competition. It didn't win the top prize, but it won the Public Choice Award. So if I can say this as delicately as possible, the unwashed public, right, chose this image. And yes, the lady in the center or the person in the center is not symmetrical exactly, but the idea, this is a symmetrical scene. Okay. You know, this is an international award-winning photo that yours truly made. Okay. I had to just show off a tiny bit. And I'm on the mezzanine in a building. It's an Art Deco building in Vancouver. Fine example of Art Deco architecture. Click. And it won. Now, I just want to tell you something. I've been a juror in a number of competitions, national and regional and international. Okay. What jurors do, the first thing they got to do is narrow it down. They get so many applications. They got to, and jurors are very conscientious, but initially it's like, do I leave it in or get rid of it? And there's a temptation to just, no, we don't want this. No, 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 knock it out, knock it out. Now get it down to a manageable number. And I will tell you that I can almost guarantee you that there's going to be a reasonable number of symmetrical scenes in that last grouping. Doesn't mean it'll win, but it's gonna be there the longest before it either wins or comes in second or third or whatever. Here's another photo contest winner, macro photography by Roland Berry. Yeah, a bug. He would not like me saying that because I don't know the actual name of this this animal. Okay, symmetry is economy and it's elegance. Right? Now we're not going to have time to go through fine art photography, but this is just one person, Athena Carey. Her fine art photography, and maybe in the future you'll want me to come and talk a little bit about what that means. But the fact is, just look at the 4 scenes. They're all symmetrical. The universe is built on a plan, the profound symmetry of which is somehow present in the inner structure of our intellect. So, Frank Lloyd Wright, probably the most famous architect of the 20th century. Okay, this was designed in 1893. It's his first ever commission, a house. Here's one picture of the exterior, symmetrical, right? Here's a picture of the interior. It's got this little nook, this little nook with a fireplace and seating or lounging. Again, symmetry. I'm going to talk to you about building exteriors and interiors. This is the Texas State Capitol building in Austin, Texas, okay? Built in 2 phases. You're looking at the 1888 phase, that's the year, and then they added a modern addition, all right? The modern addition was built below grade, below the ground level, so they didn't disturb the park-like atmosphere around the original Capitol building. This is in Texas, and of course it's Texas, so it won't surprise you if Texans tell us that it's the largest Capitol building in the United States, except for the U.S. Capitol. Okay, but I found this to be the most comfortable place to stand to get it all in, and it's symmetry. Inside, interior, that dome is 200 feet above the ground. So I'm looking up at an angle, symmetry. I'm going to kind of step back a little bit here, and we can see this, trying to get that sense of the volumetric space, but in a very symmetrical way. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to climb up halfway. What I want to do is I want to get a picture of the floor or the rotunda and also the dome. Well, I couldn't do it. This is a super wide angle lens, rectilinear lens. I think it's 9 millimeters, Laowa lens, okay? It still couldn't get it in. So I used a fisheye lens again. And you know, when there's round elements in the scene, I find a fisheye lens is less gimmicky. I mean, you might still think it's gimmicky, but I like the composition. And yeah, can I make it better? Well, yeah, I can reimagine reality. And I would have wished that sunlight was coming through the dome. See those little slits in the dome at the very tippy top. I thought it'd be nice if light was coming through there. So I did this in post. Please don't be upset. This is another example of symmetry. Now, you may look at this and think, well, where's the symmetry? Well, remember translational symmetry, right? First floor, second floor, third floor, the tower floors, you see, it's horizontal. The symmetry is repeated over and over again in a horizontal fashion. This is Salisbury Cathedral. This is one of the tallest spires in Europe, and it is, in fact, one of the only remaining spires because they've all collapsed, or most of them have collapsed because of the weight, because they're all stone. For some reason, this one was built in a way that it's very sturdy so far. Let's hope it can remain longer. But inside, you see, is glorious. I dreamt of this, and this is what I hope to photograph. I will tell you that I got so close to the font in the foreground with my tripod and my camera and my, what do you call it, remote control cable, that I baptized my cable. So I treat it very carefully now. It's a little embarrassing at the time. Now I got to tell you something else, which I don't normally tell people this, and I'm telling you because we're bonding. There was actually scaffolding in the right-hand side of this image. The entire area, this is part 2 of my presentation. I started with symmetry that was existing. I showed you that already. Now we're going to do part 2, which is creatively reimagining symmetry. Well, okay, this was designed to be this way. However, there was scaffolding. And I just used that graphic to explain that, okay? I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I pretended it wasn't there. I made the photograph. And then what I did is I took the left half of the image and I reversed it and put it on the right side. So it's composited, okay? Yeah, it's composited symmetry. And to prove it to you, I never have ever zoomed in. I'm going to zoom in for you. So you'll see what I mean. There are twin pastors here, and they're each preaching, they're practicing their presentation, and there are a couple of groups of other folks down below. Anyway, you get the idea. That got me thinking about how maybe I could be a little more creative with symmetry. Okay. So symmetry is simplicity. Simple scientific laws are preferred because if they fit or fully explain the data, they're more likely to be the source of it. Part of the answer is that simplicity is the defining feature of science. This is a molecular genetics professor in Surrey, in the UK. I've spoken to a number of university professors who, like where I live in Vancouver, the University of British Columbia has a whole club, photography club, but it's all with professors emeritus, former professors from all disciplines. Oh my God, it was the most fantastic experience. I talked about symmetry and everyone got so excited and they started explaining to me how they see symmetry in their own discipline. Well, it wasn't that I was getting a lecture on what symmetry should be. It was to show the pervasiveness in everything of symmetry. You guys have, I'm sure, I'm thinking, I've heard of the exposure triangle, right? You balance shutter speed, ISO, or the sensitivity of the sensor, and aperture, the opening in the lens, right? And that gives you exposure or image brightness, level of brightness. Well, I have something I call the creativity triangle, which I'm going to share with you. It involves curiosity and play and imagination. Here's how it works. Artistic creativity often commences with curiosity. You're curious about something, want to learn more about anything. Curiosity is very often manifested through play. Now, I use the word play. Play is not just for kids, all right? It's research, it's experimentation, okay? Play fosters the freedom to exercise one's imagination. And imagination, or imaginative play, best sparks creativity. So what do we have here? We have kind of a merry-go-round, I'll call it, a circular effort. You know, play involves learning and then discarding rules. There are no universally accepted rules of photography. I'm not going to get on that hobby horse right now, but just to let you know, that's what's fantastic about photography. It makes it challenging to teach, okay? But there are no universally accepted rules of anything. And if you want to be creative in photography, you're going to have to endure far more failures than you are successes. If you're not failing, you're actually not trying hard enough to be creative. That may sound harsh, but that's not my intent. Is to say that, you know, failure is part of the process, as we say, or process, as you might say. But as I said, play is research, it's experimentation. So, an example. Here is a brewery in Vancouver. This was during the 2010 Olympic Games. I photographed this beer hall. Prior to that, it was a salt storage building. Okay, it was an industrial building. Okay, so that's symmetrical. I'm now going to go inside and show you a view from the corner, which is another favorite location where I can kind of try to get the sense of the volumetric space. Okay, the three-dimensional space. Then I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, what if I wanted to make this somehow symmetrical? What would I put the axis? That's what you got to do first. Where are you going to put the axis of symmetry where when it matches the other side, you know, it's going to look like it makes sense. So what I decided to do after I tried a few, I failed a bit, then I found this location, which you may think, well, why that location? Well, you'll see when I put it together, I'm going to get like the most fantastic bar you ever saw. not only do I have two lovely rounded corners where more than two people can talk together, because I mean, when you're on a straight bar, if you're the guy in the middle, you can probably have a three-person conversation. If you're on a curve, you can really expand the number of people that can communicate with each other. I'm not doing that like I'm an expert in bars, but I'm just saying, just think about it, okay? You see the space in the center here, or maybe you can see where my cursor is. That's where the server can come up and get the drinks to take to the tables around the perimeter, or get the bill to go to the tables for the patrons to pay the check. Anyway, now some people might look at this and say, "Whoa, wait. I think it's creatively. I say it's creatively reimagining symmetry." All right. Some people would call it deep fake photography. And I understand that's kind of the language of today. But I found this quote that just made me feel much better. A photograph is not a likeness. The moment an emotion or fact is transformed into a photograph, it's no longer a fact, but an opinion. There's no such thing as inaccuracy in a photograph. All photographs are accurate. None of them is the truth. Oh, this is great. Richard Avedon, famous portrait and fashion photographer, made this quote. But because of that, I can sleep at night and just have fun, playing around. Symmetry, I might have mentioned, is simplicity. Our visual system may be hardwired in such a way that it's easier to process symmetric stimuli than to process asymmetric stimuli. A simple example or a simple explanation for our attraction to symmetry is that it is familiar. Symmetrical objects and images play by the rules that our brains are programmed to easily recognize. Does that mean you should do symmetry? No. I'm giving you an option and I'm explaining to you why symmetry is powerful. You, as the photographer artist, you get to decide. You can do anything you want. You can purposely look for scenes that are asymmetrical, right? Okay. This is near where I live. This is an underpass under a 4-lane highway. I just simply took half the image, I flipped it left and right, stuck it together, and boom, I have a scene. Like it or not, that's a symmetrical scene, and the axis is right vertically in the center. Here I did it with a garden. Again, axis is down the center. Now, if you're going to take a curved bridge, you got to be sure, or if you want to make a curved bridge, you got to be very careful as to where you decide that axis is going to be. Otherwise, it's going to look a little weird. So, just a little hint. This is a famous Japanese garden at the University of British Columbia. Denali National Park in Alaska. Now, sometimes when you make symmetry, when you are inventing it, you are creating it, you get kind of, that to me looks like a face. There's the mouth, there's the nose, the eyes. Maybe it's just me, but I find faces in a lot of things, and maybe that's why I needed to go to a neurologist. I don't know, but the fact is that I'm just sharing. So I'll show you what I do as an example. This is an original raw file shot in Portugal. A beautiful cityscape, Azenhas do Mar seaside village. When I'm photographing, I'm trying to get images that are as bright as possible without overexposing anything. I don't have time to go into details of photography in that sense, exposure, blah, 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 but just showing you what I did. I took that, and what I do is I take it and I edit it, and I decide where there might be an axis of symmetry. So here I created what I call a promontory, the Azenhas do Mar promontory. It doesn't exist, but I thought it kind of looked cool to my little brain. How about I do the opposite? What if I take the same image and I create the Straits of Azenhas Azenjas do Mar, Portugal. Not the exact same image because this is not a long exposure, but it's the same time. Okay. And yeah, I thought this is really cool too. I'm just having fun. And by the way, if you're in a camera club, one of the main purposes is to have fun, right? Meet like-minded people, make some friends, see what other people are doing, and just go crazy with your camera. Like have a wonderful time. So moving from documenting and enhancing reality to reimagining or reality reimagined. And this is one of the most asymmetrical buildings I have seen. It's not one of mine. It's a wonderful modern building. Now, you see there's translational symmetry, but I'm talking about more bilateral, meaning there's a central vertical axis. However, I'll show it to you because it's really cool, and I'll show you what I did. So this is the interior. I mean, it's wow, pretty cool. It's this the university. This is the university building for the students. Okay, and you can see this is one that was shot during COVID. So I did do some photography. Challenging because of the light coming through the windows. I wanted to see outside. I want to see inside. I want to see in the shadows. I want to see a lot of things. So I bracketed a number of exposures, picked 2 exposures, one as bright as possible without overexposing any highlights, and one so much brighter than the first that I didn't clip any shadows. Put them together in Lightroom, made an HDR image, and there it is. But it's anything but symmetrical. Okay. Then I went to a talk, and you may know Christy Odom. She's a wonderful photographer, and she showed some flower pictures. And I love this flower. Well, actually, it was when I got home and I'm looking at this because they taped the video, and it's got 2 axes. That's why it's so cool to me. It's got a vertical and a horizontal axis, and you may have seen it immediately, but I didn't immediately recognize it, to be honest. So I thought, well, I could do that with buildings. So look, here's what I did. Here's the ceiling in that building. Again, pretty cool, but like a lot of different things happening. Well, I like the lower left quadrant. Assuming you're looking at what I'm looking at, because sometimes when I look at my computer and then it's projected, it may not be the same, but let's say I see outside glass and yeah, I see this portion here. Maybe that's what I should do. I see this area here. So look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to repeat it 4 times. Now I've got this building. This is, engineers love when I say this because I would say this building does not work. Like, what the hell do you do in this building? So it was probably designed by an architect. Whereas if it was an engineer, then it would be very functional and so forth. Anyway, they love that, to hear that. The point is, I'm playing. So that's one example. Here's another example. Oh, there's the 4 quadrants, right? Another example. I'm facing this central element face on. The left side is all glass. The right side is all rooms for studying and meetings and so forth. I like the left half of this picture better than the right half. So why don't I just take the left half and I'll flip it horizontally, merge it together, and I'll create this incredible environment. I'm just having fun. One more. We've got this incredible staircase, crazy staircase, okay? I mean, it's the longest, narrowest staircase I've ever seen. Literally, it's longer than a football field. I kid you not, okay? But I figured, well, I can tell you which half I like better, right? I'm going to like the right more than the left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it. But now, when we're playing with photography, we can change proportions, especially with buildings. I'm going to just spread it out, and it's going to look better. you know, if I were just showing you this, if I was just showing you this to begin with, you would have said, whoa, that's pretty cool. I mean, that staircase is quite dramatic. I mean, someone could walk down that staircase and maybe, I don't know, maybe run for president or something. Well, I got to tell you one thing. If my wife was on the first staircase and I then did this, I would not still be married. Okay, if you get my drift on that one. Creativity is inventing, experimenting, taking risks, breaking rules, making mistakes, lots of mistakes, and having fun. Now, I put at the top this conclusion, well, I'm going to show you one more series of images because I suggested I should say at the beginning that I want to deal with people. This has to do with avoiding people in constructing symmetrical scenes because pretty much I've been doing that. I don't know if you noticed that, but there weren't a lot of people. Here's an example. I'm looking at an airplane, the back end of the airplane. I think there's a good word for that. I'm not sure what it is. It's actually Air Force One that Reagan flew on. This is the Reagan National Library in California. And you see the two gentlemen that are walking toward each other. Well, look at they're in the exact same pose. It looks a little bit like, well, how did that happen? This is not a ballet. It's not a dance. And for me, it's like, do I take one out? You know? So in any event, here's I was trying to think how could I deal with symmetry with multiple people is what I'm saying. All right. So I found this book called Identical Twin Farmers. And I thought, whoa, now that's pretty cool. I mean, they're already twins. So I looked at the images. There's a lot of images. Fine. That's one that got me going, thinking, okay. Then I found this book on doppelgangers. You know what a doppelganger is? Two people who are not related and have no family connections, going back almost a century, but they look alike, they act alike, they share genetic similarities. And when they're aware of each other, they'll agree to dress alike for a photograph. Okay. So, all right, there we have it. So I got to thinking, well, what if I went through my file of street photography? Because I give a presentation like I'm giving you just on street photography, urban street photography. And so that was another inspiration. One more, because I'd mentioned to you that I put together a presentation I continually update on the impacts of artificial intelligence in photography. I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly because they're really literally those three aspects of it. This has to do with digital humans that are alive in the online world. But more importantly, it's only a matter of time before everyone will have their own digital twin. Digital humans are intended to be indistinguishable from real people. Now, when they're talking about it, they're talking about online stuff, right? No, I'm going to say, what if I was photographing twins? One is digital and one is real, and you can't tell the difference. So here we go. Now, this is a combination. This is mixed media because I can't say it's a pure photograph, although most of it is generated by photographs, but it involves compositing and a little bit of AI as well, artificial intelligence. But this is a part of a talk that I give on creative image series, where I talk about curiosity, play, and imagination. I showed you that already. So whether you think they're digital twins or doppelgangers or another term that's used are parallels, okay? This is a picture in England, okay? And I'm inside of a castle looking out at the garden. Yeah, everything is pretty symmetrical. Not every person, but two guys that I found looking out the window. Amazing. How lucky I was. How about in San Juan, Puerto Rico? This is a duet. These guys are digital twins or they're twins, I don't know. And they're playing. One's left-handed, one's right-handed. That's interesting, you know? Okay. Here's another group. I'll call these twins. These Puerto Rican dancers were quite interesting. These two ladies actually had a dress made that they could wear together for this dance that they were doing. It was photographing dancers. And well, the only thing I noticed was when one of them had to use the washroom, they both had to go in, right? Because, you can't exactly move too far apart from each other, if you get my drift. Okay, couple more. Custom built, oh, this is interesting. These two guys built a custom built stationary workout bicycle. Now, they both like to exercise. They live together in a small apartment in Cambridge. I got to teach at Cambridge. That's for real. That's for true. In any event, they don't have much space. So they built this bike. They can sit on it and they can talk to each other. And they can pedal, but they're not going to go anywhere. And they posed for this. So that was nice of them. Here in Dallas, Texas. Okay. Yeah, I call this competition. The guy on the left is saying, I'm cool. And the guy on the right saying, well, no, I'm cooler. They're just being competitive. I got to mention one thing. I don't know if you've heard of quantum entanglement. I'm gonna show you how that has also inspired me. This is physics. I'm not a physicist, okay? But I gotta just give you the inspiration. Quantum entanglement is a complex phenomenon in physics that's usually described as an invisible link between distant quantum particles that allows one to instantly affect the other. As an example, when one of the particles changes its direction of rotational spin, the other entangled particle instantly responds by spinning in the opposite direction. You see the arrows, okay? Regardless of the distance between them. So I did what's called a thought experiment, all right? I asked myself, can larger, more complex objects become entangled? That's a question. And then what if we considered symmetry as a form of expressing entanglement? Right? One spinning one way, one spinning another way. And to go further, what if the two particles that were entangled were actually heads? If I can put it that way, we're going to say particles are so big, they're actually human. And I got this photo in Portugal as well. I was very lucky because what's amazing is that we've got two guys here. The one on the left is saying he's lost. The one on the right saying, me too. Okay, these are you can call them whatever you want to call them. They're dressed the same. What's amazing about it is something that normally you don't see, and that is males, like men, actually looking at maps, because men don't normally want to do that, right? We think, no, we're gonna find our way. We don't need maps. Okay. Getting close to the conclusion, I want to just give you a quote from a very famous guy, Albert Einstein. All right. This is the power of play and creativity. Totally applicable to what we're talking about here. Totally applicable to photography. If at first an idea does not sound absurd, then there's no hope for it. What is he doing? He's saying, you know what? Don't worry if it sounds crazy. Like what I was doing, pretending that particles are actually people and they can spin in opposite directions, and somehow I can justify it and make a photo out of it, make a series out of it. That most people would think I was totally nuts, and maybe I am, but that's an example of an absurd idea that you can make into an artistic impression. Couple more. Practicing for the synchronized fishing Olympic event. This is in Cuba, in Havana, or Habana, as they would say. And look at these two guys. I mean, you've seen synchronized swimming events at the Olympics, but fishing is coming up. I don't know if it's next in the next 4 years or not, but these guys are very much together. Like, wow, very well synchronized. And finally, digital twins. In AI, there's something called an hallucination, where it doesn't always the algorithm does not always produce what you expect it to. I call this independence. All right. See, I found these two ladies. I asked them if they would both look at me. The one on the right said, "Sure, I'll look at you and I'll let you take the picture." The one on the left went like, "Humph, you know what? I'm not going to do this just because you ask to take my picture." And so I took the picture anyway, you know? So I call it independence. I think this is actually the last image. Sorry, I think. Um, Defiance. I'm walking down the street. I see these two ladies. They both look at me. Literally, they are dressed the same. Okay, that's fine. Look at their hand movements. That's incredible. And they're actually both saying the same thing. It's like they had this plan. They said, "Don't you dare take our photo." So I looked at them and I put a camera up and they made that expression, or that they said, "If you don't you dare take our photo." And I apologized and I kept walking. So just between us, that's an advantage of a silent shutter. Just saying there is an advantage. And finally, two quotes. One on creativity: "Play is the highest form of research." Again, my buddy, Albert Einstein. And the best quote of all: "We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." So thank you so much, guys. I tell you what, here's a list of possible subjects. I might have already sent these to Christine, but maybe in the future years or whatever. I know there are a lot of good speakers out there. I'd love to come back and chat with you. I'll tell you the most popular one these days: waterfront cityscape photography, inspiring creativity in photography, and artificial intelligence in photography. I also do one on black and white and color, one on street photography. You can see the list. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm going to stop here and exit, and I'm going to stop sharing and hope that there's still people here, because when you're talking on Zoom, I can't see anybody. So just let me just figure out how I can stop sharing.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, yeah, you're quite welcome. Here we go. Leave meeting. No, not leave meeting. Stop sharing.
Do you have any questions for Rick? Anyone?
On all of your photos, are they all one shot, or do you do like a stack on them, on all of those, the first ones that you're showing with all of the buildings?
Okay, can you just, what was the question again, please?
Are most of your photos one photo, or do you do a stack on them?
Gotcha. Most of them are one. Most of them are single photos. Often the interiors are an HDR. If I have windows where I'm looking outside the window at the same time that I'm looking inside, there's a high dynamic range of light. And then I do a series, and then I go home and I pick the ones that I like the best afterwards. Some people say, "Oh, don't you know what you're doing? You should just be able to do two and it's over." No. I just overshoot. I admit that. Real men overshoot. It's okay to do that. And then choose the ones that you like the best to combine.
Other questions?
You had the biggest collection of creative photography I think we've seen for a long time. So thank you for the presentation this evening. This is really thought-provoking. So my question back to you is, how do you juice yourself to get yourself in a creative frame of mind when you go out to capture some of this? If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Okay, so the combination of things. First of all, I have a little boy brain, which means as I get older, I am less concerned about what I might do or look like or say, without wanting to insult anybody or embarrass anybody. I'm just saying I'm open to a lot of crazy things. All right. What I showed you tonight was a combination of looking for symmetry, but I'm admitting that the majority of them I had already taken, but never thought about that it was symmetry. So I was combining both types. Does that make any sense, what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Just being open. Okay. It's ideally you would go out with an intent. Go photographing with an intent. Going to a location. I want to get a cityscape. So I want to stand in the right location. How do I do it? When's the light? Where's the light coming from? What time of day? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, but at the same time, you got to be open to serendipity and happenstance. Something might occur along the way. The pictures of the dancers in Puerto Rico, I said it was one lady, right, with a dress. The one that I said was two women, and they made this dress together. That was unexpected. I was invited to go in and photograph them, I didn't get done what I intended to do originally. But I had so much fun being with everyone, and by the way, just so you know, I sent everybody that had a photograph. I got their address, and afterwards, when I got home, I sent them all images, just to thank them for allowing me to photograph them or their family.
That's great. Thank you, Rick. This is John. It was everything that I hoped it would be. Thank you so much for sharing them great images. Your humor was fantastic. You had everybody chuckling in here. Quick question for you, though, is there are a couple images where you're very blunt and in your face that this is a symmetrical mirror. Do you ever take some of those photos and just erase those little cues, like the red chair that's mirrored? Maybe you change the chair a different color. Are you ever trying to deceive people into thinking it's a mirror, or are you more along the lines of, you know what, I'm going to smack you in the face with the fact that this is a symmetrical, perfect mirror?
Well, a lot of them were smack you in the face, if I can say it that way. I'm using your quote, okay? But on the last group with people, you'll notice that one of them with the guitar players, there was a dog, and then there was the violin or the guitar case on one side, another one that had a lamp on one side and a wall on the other side. So some of that was added afterwards. It wasn't color, but it was another object or two. So yes, I do that, but I'm also into, like, I love actually being out making the photos, and I enjoy editing, but I don't want to spend a huge amount of time. I'll just tell you something real quickly. I know I'm probably running out of time here, but sometimes people ask, how do you make the symmetry? What do you use? Well, you know what? I didn't use Photoshop, even though I have Photoshop. I use Keynote or PowerPoint. I I make a copy, I flip it left or right, and then I just put it together. Boom. Like, it's so simple. And the final thing I'm going to say is, especially if there are no more questions, is that I have a policy. Anybody who sits through my presentations, okay, in the future, anytime in the future, if you have a question, you can send me an email. The last slide that was out there briefly, but it'll still be on the video, I think, is my email address. And you can ask me anything you want. And people say, well, why would you do that? Well, because teaching is the best way to learn. If any of you guys listening are teachers, guy is a generic term, okay? Any people who are teachers, you'll know what I mean. And I learn so much by teaching that I don't mind trying to answer questions. And if I don't have the answer, then I got to go try to find it. So that's my comment. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we will see you everyone next week for
Print contest.
Print contests.
Print contest.
Print contest, theme of lights and shadows again.
And everybody here in person, please peruse the books. There's plenty. Take some books if you think you have somebody you know that may like one. And all we do ask is a donation. It could be $1 for 20 books. I don't care. But at least something to help the club. Rick, thank you again so much, and everybody else for watching. And we'll catch everybody next week. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Rick.
Hey, John, I got an email from our judge from last week. Mind if I read this to everybody?
Yeah, let me end the meeting.